2024 NFL breakout players. We're talking running backs and offensive linemen here. Which running backs might jump into superstardom in 2024? And we can't forget about the big men up front blocking for them on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we especially love it when you hit that subscribe button on YouTube and everywhere you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. All right, running backs and O-linemen as we continue our series of breakout players in 2024. And look, there is some obvious low-hanging fruit, year two players that were first-round picks, like Bijan Robinson. And we've got to cover Bijan Robinson because he was disappointing to some folks, probably Falcons fans, probably fantasy owners that drafted him very early. And with Arthur Smith gone and a new regime in town, and that head coach saying, quote, "We're going to get the ball to Bijan Robinson as much as possible," end quote, has to be something that if you drafted him in your dynasty league, let's say, or if you bought that Bijan Robinson rookie jersey, you're going to be happy with the production this year. All the talent in the world, run, receiver. I mean, this could be a ridiculous season for Bijan Robinson. We're talking like best running back in the NFL, potentially, statistically, with a young back that could just carry the load for the Atlanta Falcons in 2024.
I adore him. I think he's absolutely tremendous. In my home league last year, he was my first round pick with like the 5th overall spots. And yeah, he was disappointing, but you see it, you know, I mean, there was one game that he was sick and he got on the field for like 2 plays. And yeah, they used Algier more than you like, but down the stretch, I think when Arthur Smith's job was, tenuous at best, Bijan really looked the part. And I really think, and fantasy drafts are showing this, that Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson are the 2 true candidates. You put in the header here, superstardom, that could maybe knock McCaffrey off the number 1 running back in the league list. Those are the 2 candidates for me.
If we're talking fantasy, I don't know if there's anybody I would take. It would be probably McCaffrey and Breece Hall, and then Bijan.
I'm torn between Hall and Bijan at 2.
Yeah.
I really am, running back wise, because they catch the ball, they do everything, score touchdowns. So yeah, I think they're superstar talent, superstar fantasy guys on the rise. Maybe if someone's going to knock McCaffrey off the perch of best running back on the planet, it's one of those 2. I mean,
McCaffrey, ancient in his age 27? Is it 28 year? I can't remember. 28 is kind of the year everyone starts to fall off a cliff, a running back, which is wild, which is funny because we went back. We were talking breakout quarterbacks, breakout wide receivers, going back year 2, year 3, guys that were drafted. Quarterbacks, we were talking about guys that were drafted in 2016, 2015, 2017, right? And with running backs, you don't go that far back. You don't need to go that far back at all. So what kind of breakout running backs did you see that are young players that might have a bigger opportunity here in 2024?
So mine are boring. I mean, these guys aren't going to be lead dudes, and maybe I'll just buzz through the list here. And for this exercise, I'm trying to avoid rookies, but I think you're crazy if you avoid rookie running backs. So
because we've had a couple of rookies we've talked about, and it's a little bit more difficult for wide receivers, a little bit more difficult for quarterbacks to truly get their footing in the NFL. But for tight ends, offensive linemen, it's more difficult. You're looking year 2, year 3 for a lot of those guys. Running backs, it's year 1, and if you haven't shown it by the time you're 24 years old, we were talking about this off the air. In fact, we were racking our brains. Okay, who was a late age breakout running back? And it's guys like Cordero Patterson, who wasn't playing running back
He
when
wasn't
he
even
was
running back, right?
22 years old. Raheem Mostert, who was a track guy and a wide receiver in college, who was a special teamer, finally got an opportunity, not even on his first football team, to actually start carrying the football. And so those types of players are even more difficult to project a breakout, because are we going to start picking guys who aren't even playing running back right now, right? So really, if you're not talking about rookies, that is when you start to break out in the NFL. If you're not a good running back early, I don't know if it's going to happen for you.
Yeah, 100%. So these three names are all rookies that are not projected to be starters, but I'm like targeting them late in my rookie dynasty drafts because I think they could make an instant impact. And it's Ray Davis in Buffalo. I'm proud of the Bills for finally going to get a power back. You play in Buffalo, you go get some big bodies to carry the football. Estime with Denver. Javonte Williams looked like a shell of himself. Maybe he comes back strong, but he's also a free agent after this year. I think P. Ryan's going to get cut. And Vidal with the Chargers. I mean, if you look at J.K. Dobbins' contract, it really implies that he's still injured. And Gus Edwards is the only thing ahead of you if that's the case. Those three guys could be prominent household names by week 4 or 5.
I like that. Those are all really good names. There's a couple other names that need opportunity, and obviously, the top of the draft reports on Marshawn Lloyd that he looks ridiculously fast with the Packers as a rookie, and you would expect those types of things. And Blake Corum has an opportunity to be a 1-2, and any injuries and a guy all of a sudden becomes running back 1. That's your fantasy league winner. That is someone who could be extremely impactful. So Trey Benson with the Cardinals, Jonathan Brooks, whenever he's fully healthy coming off his ACL for the Carolina Panthers, could end up carrying the load, but maybe they don't get the full opportunity in year 1. Whenever those guys get the opportunity in year 1, you expect huge production from those guys. And Jalen Wright's another one for the Dolphins. He's just a perfect fit for what they do, but they've just got a couple of guys in Raheem Mostert, who is the closest player to his style of play. That's who I projected. That's who I comped him to before the draft. And he ends up going to Raheem Mostert's Miami Dolphins. And Achane they've got there. Both those guys have injury history. So maybe Jalen Wright gets the opportunity. He is that style of running back. So great fit, but just kind of blocked behind some guys. So any of those players I could see absolutely breaking out. They just need the opportunity. I like Tyrone Tracy with the Giants as well, if we're going a little bit deeper in the draft, the 5th round.
Good one.
Year 2 guys.
Yeah, I got 2 of them.
Both first rounders. We talked about Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Will he ever carry the load? Is he a guy that you don't want to carry the load because his value is being the dynamic change up to a bigger power back? And if you start giving a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs all the carries, and is he going to break down on you anyway? So he's an interesting one for me.
I think he's already broke out, but I don't know that he can break out more because I don't think they want him carrying more touches. You know what I mean? Like he maximized his touches, and I think he always will in that offense with that line. But we're going to keep that under wraps. Let's just do exactly what we did, Right.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree there. And, there could be more there. It'll be more like, he has a massive game here because he broke off a big touchdown run. But statistically, maybe not carry the load guy. Maybe he shouldn't be.
Yeah. But I think they're super happy with him. He's a star,
I believe I'm going to guess a guy. Is Kendre Miller one of your guys?
That's my favorite guy on my whole running back list. And I've been trying to pry him away in dynasty leagues, and he's been more expensive than you think. I thought Kamara was a shell of himself as a runner last year. He still caught the ball well, but he's expensive. We always know the Saints have cap issues. Is Kamara even on the team when the season starts? And Jamal Williams is some of the same draft classes, Kamara and Connor and McCaffrey and those guys. Miller just had a hard time getting opportunities, but he flashed a little bit. He's my favorite one. And the other one from last year is Spears with the Titans. Those are my 2.
I like both of those a lot. Opportunity is obviously huge. And Spears is an interesting player because is he a carry the load guy? But Tony Pollard's there, a lot of speed and athleticism at running back for the Tennessee Titans there. Mm-hmm. But, he's a good pass catcher. And again, he showed flashes and, there's no Derrick Henry there to take all of the carries and you don't have to run that. Derrick Henry, his style is that you want to keep giving him the ball because that's his strength. So it's harder to work in a running back versus I think some other running backs, you might have a much better opportunity if you're a number 2 back because you don't need to give you don't need to wear down like the style of runner, the style of offense. You don't need to wear it down. You can go one guy one series, another guy another series, bring a guy in on third down, go back and forth with Derrick Henry. The strength of who he is as a player is you want to keep giving him the ball because you want to wear down that defense for the fourth quarter. It's not like that anymore in Tennessee.
Nope, 100%. And I'm not predicting it, but Pollard's a little older than you think, and it wouldn't blow me away if Spears gets the most touches in that backfield this year when it's all said and done.
And Pollard hasn't proven that he's going to be a bell cow guy, and that should be that he should be either. And so I love that 1-2 there now in Tennessee, and Spears in a nice situation there to get a lot of carries, maybe more carries than people expect in that Titans offense. Next, more breakout running backs and some breakout offensive linemen to watch out for in 2024 next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NFL tickets, NBA Finals tickets, Major League Baseball tickets even faster and easier because prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to kickoff. We're talking killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying any of the sports, concert, comedy show, theater event tickets near you. We're talking last-minute deals up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concerts, and comedy tickets. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals, flash deals, zone deals, where you choose the section, Game Time chooses you the seats. All-in pricing. I love that feature. No surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view from your seat. You know exactly what it's going to look like before you buy. You bring it up on your phone. It's not just a photograph of what it's going to look like from the seats. You get a panoramic view. Move your phone around, see what it looks like while you are sitting in those seats before you buy. So take all of the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we're talking breakout running backs, breakout offensive linemen on Peacock and Williamson today. When it comes to breakout players, and are you looking just for opportunity, or is there some really talented players that are maybe a little bit overlooked here from the last couple of draft classes, Matt? Any other big names on your list where you're like, I like this guy this year?
That's not the approach I took with running backs. I did more so with other positions. Running backs, I'm more concerned with volume, opportunity, and that's not to discredit the position, but if we're talking third, fourth rounders, I don't think there's a huge distinction between some of them athletically and all those different things. So like a perfect example of that is the next guy on my list. I only have two more running backs is Zamir White. Like, is he phenomenal? No. Did I love him coming out of school? No, but he was pretty impressive down the stretch last year whenever he was the man. And they really didn't do anything else to position. Like, he's going to lead the Raiders in carries unless injuries get in the way.
I got a couple more names here at running back, and I think this one is a name that people aren't talking about enough, and that is the speedy Chase Brown from the Cincinnati Bengals.
I thought about him
because, 5th round pick last year, but the only guy in front of him is Zach Moss. Zach Moss is on his 4th NFL team right now.
Yeah.
With the Cincinnati Bengals. Is he really going to be the impediment for a talented back that might be more explosive to take carries and end up making some waves there? So I think there's opportunity now in that backfield. New look backfield, new opportunities potentially. And, Zach Moss is probably going to get the first carry of the year, but I wouldn't be shocked if Chase Brown gets the last carry of the year there.
I don't have much to add. I was just really impressed with how Moss played last year, though. I mean, I've kind of always been a Zach Moss fan. That's not a knock on Brown.
He was the rare late breakout player.
I think a little bit.
We're talking about, right? And I'd kind of buried him. So maybe that's him now, or maybe it just worked. You see a lot of players like that. They have a 1 year blip, and then it's like, oh well, that was fun, but what else is there? And he got himself positioned as the running back 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals this year, but I don't know that that's done. And I think there's at least, with the style of play that Zach Moss has, I think there's at least an opportunity for big wide receiver 2 usage in Cincinnati.
100%. And I do think, Brown has a lot of big play ability too. I mean, he's got a lot more home run speed for a bigger back than Moss does for sure.
Going back to the 2022 class, Rashawn White had a lot of receptions last year. I don't think he's a star player. James Cook had a nice breakout with the Buffalo Bills. I know you mentioned the rookie Bills running back. Do you think there's more there for James Cook potentially in 2024?
Maybe. I mean, I think when they made the coordinator change in Buffalo, it became pretty apparent that they want Cook and Kincaid catching more passes. I think he's dynamic. He finished the season strong, but I think he's closer to the Gibbs conversation where we probably gave him just enough and let's not push our luck,
Absolutely. Kenneth Walker is one because he's a talented
I
runner.
love him. Yeah.
Just as a pure runner. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. We talked about the new regime in Seattle where, they come from Baltimore. They're going to run the ball, but they're going to run more plays. So that means more running plays as well. So potentially more production from quarterback, wide receivers, but also from running backs. And just because there's going to be more total plays potentially, there are more points scored. Maybe you're in the red zone more often. So could Kenneth Walker, if he's able to stay healthy, reach a new height and a new breakout level, even though everyone knows already how good of a pure runner he is?
Without question. I mean, we do have a new staff there that might view things differently. And I don't dislike Charbonnet, but I really think Walker's one of the best ball carriers in the league. I mean, almost like a Nick Chubb, where he's a great old school 1980s runner, you know what I mean? But isn't super built for today's NFL. But I think he's a phenomenal football player.
Do you have any other breakout running backs before we move on to the big ones up front, Matt, to the offensive linemen? There's for me, especially with running backs, it kind of becomes a fantasy football conversation.
Yeah.
Just collect all the young talented backs and hope the guy in front of them gets hurt, right? Because
and that's kind of my last one.
True top of the, because in fantasy leagues. Remember, there's like zero running back became all the rage for a while, right? Because there's so many running backs, and then you can get the best quarterback, the best wide receiver, the best tight end that could be league winners for you early in drafts, and then you can just collect a whole bunch of running backs. I think it's come back the other way because there's so few bell cow backs. Well, now you want to go running back early and get some of the really good ones in the NFL, and then wait and get a bunch of the many talented pass catchers in the NFL. And I mean, there's more good quarterbacks in the league. Some teams might not feel that way, but there's more good quarterbacks in the league now than maybe ever before. A lot of productive ones and fantasy relevant quarterbacks that you can draft in your fantasy leagues. And this isn't a fantasy podcast, but just with running backs especially, that's where my mind goes with value and how you can with stock with running backs and how you would treat them. And you're picking a breakout player, and then later in your fantasy draft again, what do? You draft all of them. Like who's got a good offensive line in front of them? That's just got a player in front of them, because those starters are going to get hurt, and a backup running back is a valuable thing. And really, when you start looking down the list, and I look at all of these rookie backs, all of these guys drafted in 2023 and 2022, like. They're all like Ty Chandler with the Vikings.
That's my guy. I was about to say, that's my last guy. Yeah.
Like, okay, well, they brought in Aaron Jones, but if Aaron Jones goes down, Ty Chandler could go crazy.
Yep. That was my last name. And my main dynasty or my main fantasy league, redrafting my buddies. I always have the most running backs on my roster when the draft ends. I mean, and they're guys like Ty Chandler because I love Aaron Jones. I mean, I think it's a great pickup for nothing for the Vikings, but he's never really been a full-time guy. And he's that same Kamara McCaffrey, year, and he was a little older than them when he came out. And Green Bay turned their back on him for a reason. And I thought Chandler was the Vikings' best back last year. He's better than Madison. He's a talented guy. He's going to play every game, and he's an injury away from being an every week fantasy starter. You know what I mean?
One more question I have for you, being a Steelers guy, is
Warren's the better player.
I know Warren's the better player. My question is almost like, is there potential for a breakout with Najee Harris? Is Najee Harris just not dynamic enough of a runner in the NFL at this stage in his career? Or,
the beauty of him is volume and reliability. He doesn't fumble. He doesn't get hurt. He wears you down in a lesser Derrick Henry role. And my whole life, the Steelers have had that type of guy. Like, I don't know that Harris could do what Warren does. I'm not sure Warren could do what Harris does. but they're going to run the ball like crazy, but they ran the ball like crazy before. Now the line's better. I bet he scores more touchdowns. Like
that was
he's
kind
not
of
a bad player.
That was my question. So, like, better line, new coordinator. Is there potentially more there? Because we've seen Arthur Smith kind of favor the bigger back.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big piece of rushing pie in Pittsburgh. Assuming the defense holds tight, they may run the ball more than any team in the league.
So the league said there was no tampering with the Philadelphia Eagles signing of Saquon Barkley. Barkley had kind of a down year last year after a huge year the year before. 962 rushing yards in 14 games last year, 3.9 yards per carry. How about a re-breakout of Saquon Barkley, reminding everybody he's a superstar with the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think it's very possible. I mean, the situation he goes to from where he was is night and day. I mean, it really is. I mean, just in terms of the blocking, the weapons other teams have to honor. Frankly, I think the tush push in Philly could kind of fade away without Kelsey as well. So maybe Barkley, just for fantasy reasons, gets in the end zone a little more than if he'd have been there a year ago. And I don't know if Hurts will dump him the ball a lot, but the fact that a smart organization went out and targeted him the minute free agency opens tells me that he's going to get the ball a lot.
So those are the breakout running backs for 2024. What about the guys blocking for him up front? Offensive line breakouts next. Finishing up today's show with some offensive line breakout players to look for. Not as sexy, not as fun as when we talked wide receivers and running backs, but oh so important to those NFL teams. Statistically harder to track offensive linemen, right, Matt? So you kind of got to scout these players, and I know you've done a lot of work as that scout when it comes to the draft. And I know your team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, has been in the market for offensive linemen the last couple drafts. So you've seen a lot of these guys in college and now in the NFL. So let's talk breakout offensive linemen in 2024 in the NFL.
I have a huge list, and it's probably not that great a radio to bring them all up. I mean, I'm talking about some fourth round guys from 2 years ago that are, starting centers that aren't, household type names. But I do think the first round tackles from last year, Johnson with the Cardinals, Wright with the Bears, and Broderick Jones here in Pittsburgh, are all going to live up to it and all take a big step forward, especially Johnson. But I think those tackles are all set to be maybe top 10, top 15 type offensive tackles.
No, those were really good ones. I mean, like Broderick Jones that was the scouting report, right? It's like, year 2, year 3, you're getting a moldable ball of clay. And now that's where he is with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I like that one. Paris Johnson, right. Started off on the right side. And I think both those teams did right by slow playing their young players and getting them ready for the NFL game. And it takes a while for offensive linemen. Offensive linemen do not reach their pinnacle in the first couple of years, unlike the running backs we're talking about out here. Wanye Morris has an opportunity to win that starting job. He's going to be competing with Kingsley Suamataia for the starting left tackle job for the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. That is a huge job in the NFL. Maybe one of the most important jobs in the NFL, being the blindside left tackle for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's going to be a year 1 and year 2 player duking it out there in Kingsley Suamataia and Wanye Morris in Chiefs camp. So that's a fun one.
That's definitely a fun one. It's a really important, as you mentioned, true training camp battle. I didn't put them on the list because I just haven't seen them in the pro level. Like the guys I listed, I saw at least a little bit of most of them and thought, okay, now they can take that next step. As you mentioned, I mean, O-line is so technique driven. Broderick Jones, for example, could be big, strong, fast, and just bully people at Georgia. But then you got to work on technique up at the pros, So that left tackle thing for the Chiefs, though, is a big deal.
And I'm not really even projecting Wanye Morris breakout. I don't know if he's going to win the job, and whoever wins the job might not quite be ready for it. So that could be disastrous as well. So that's just like, could this be a breakout? I don't know. You're kind of hoping.
It worries me.
If you're a Chiefs fan. Absolutely. Similarly, actually, the offensive lineman that was drafted very next, our offensive tackle that was drafted next after Wanye Morris in that 2023 draft was Blake Freeland. Out of BYU, similar, like, what we were talking about raw players. He was raw as it gets, bad technique, but insanely athletic and tall, and kind of got thrown in the fire a little bit last year with the Colts and had some struggles. So we'll see if he can be that, starting caliber offensive tackle in the NFL. It's going to be a huge year for him. DeJuan Jones actually in that range. I mean, we're talking starting offensive tackles. That was a really good offensive tackle class last year. There's a number of guys who might be starting tackles in the 3rd, 4th round range, and that doesn't happen every year.
Yeah, 2 years in a row where you actually had high quality tackles coming into the league. I harp on this all the time. I think the discrepancy between D-line talent is so much greater than O-line talent, but maybe this last year or two, they narrow that gap a little bit.
You mentioned Jason Kelce and his retirement, and the Eagles drafted his replacement a couple years ago in 2022, 2nd rounder Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. And he's been playing some guard and kind of waiting for that opportunity. So, it's up to him. I mean, he's potentially that breakout guy, nobody better to learn the position from. And hopefully for the Philadelphia Eagles, they don't lose anything going, after the retirement of such an awesome player, probably a Hall of Fame center in Jason Kelce. And the Eagles have done such a phenomenal job of drafting and developing offensive linemen. That's still going to remain a strength. And so, kudos to the Eagles for what they've been able to do to build that thing up front. Obviously, priority up front, both offensive and defensive line for the Eagles for a long time.
Yeah, Beef Jurgens is on my list. We saw enough of him at guard that he can hang in the league. He's a natural center. As you mentioned, I mean, the Eagles O-line coach is an elite developer of talent. So I think he'll be a fixture at center for the Eagles.
Who's next on your list?
Want to rapid fire the second-year dudes here. We talked about the dudes in the first round. I have Bergeron in Atlanta and Torrance in Buffalo, as well as Sidney Sowell with the Patriots. I think those 3 guards are going to be quality players, plus starters. And then Avila already was that for the Rams, and now they're kicking him into center, which I think is his best spot. And I really liked Tippmann, the center out of Wisconsin, who ended up with the Jets. And now they finally did enough on their O-line. I think he can just stay at center. So those are my names there from last year's draft.
I like it. How did John Michael Schmitz play? He was thought of as the best center in the class and actually went after Joe Tippmann in the 2023 class.
Yeah.
The Giants line has kind of struggled. And so you always have to wonder if there's a developmental problem and not a talent in the draft problem there.
I know. So I didn't put him on just because him and the entire line, not named Andrew Thomas, was so bad last year. But I loved them coming out of school, and now they actually have real guards next to them. Maybe they overpaid for the Runyons of the world or whatever, but still, I think he has a real chance to be on this list too.
I got to talk about the first offensive lineman that was drafted, the first guard that was drafted in 2023. That's Peter Skoronski. And, he's a player that transitioned from left tackle to left guard with the Tennessee Titans. And obviously the Titans drafted another tackle. So Skoronski's going to play there. He's going to play guard. And I wonder if he might make good on being, and look good as a rookie. Could he be great? Is he the guy we're talking about? Best guard in the league? Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, this is really lofty praise, but Zach Martin was that guy at Notre Dame. They kicked him into guard, and now he's one of the best guards ever. I mean, I don't know if Skoronski will get that level, but that's the plan. You know what I mean? You
draft a guard at 11, you expect he's going to be like an all-pro guy, right?
They almost have to be to make it worth it. I mean, the same with Linderbaum, who I think already did break out.
Anybody else finish it up? We got a little bit of time left here. If you want any more out there, you can get as deep as you want in some sleeper offensive linemen.
Yeah, I'm going to nerd out just for a minute for the 2022 and 21 class. I think Raymond, the right or the left tackle for the Colts, is going to hold on to that job. And he was an overage guy. I thought he got better and better as the season went on. So I think he holds the BYU kid off for a while. Tyler Smith, if people don't know, I mentioned Zach Martin, but Tyler Smith in Dallas is absolutely one of the best guards on the planet. And I love that he doesn't have to kick out the tackle. He's just going to stay there and just abuse people. Braxton Jones with the Bears mid-round pick. He's starting to come into his own. I think he's a quality starter. And then 4 names from 2021 that I just don't know if people realize how good they are. Dahlman, the center for the Falcons, I think has really asserted himself as a mid to upper tier starting center. I think Cosme, the tackle turned guard for the Commanders, is their best lineman and continues to get better. Rashawn Slater kind of has been out of sight, out of mind, but pair him with Alt. That could be one of the best tackle tandems for years and years to come. And everyone thought, Quinn Meinerz was a fun little, he had the short shirt and he's from a tiny school and all that. He's a killer. He's going to be one of the best guards in the leagues. I mean, if you don't know it now, he's going to be one of these stars.
And just one more note, one of the other things, it's I think it's probably, for quarterbacks and they come into the league and it's like the speed of the NFL. How fast, the defenders close on balls and windows you have to throw before a guy's open and you can't wait until he's open. And I think for offensive linemen in the NFL, it's just pure strength and just being in an NFL weight room. And this is your full-time job and you're a professional, and just small little technique things like getting your feet aligned in the right way and getting in position right here. You need to be not right here. You need to be on this shoulder of the offensive lineman with this, or on the defensive lineman with this step. And you need to have that strength, and you work on your anchor. And there's just so many things for an offensive lineman to grow into, to be playing against these grown men at the NFL level. I think there's absolutely such huge gains to be made for offensive linemen year 2 and year 3, and especially just getting in just the pure strength, getting into that NFL weight room for a full year as a rookie.
No question. And I really harp on the technique too. Like if you're ever around even like college offensive line coaches, serious O-line coaches, like when I was at Pitt, I would just listen in all the time. I mean, because I was there longer than with the Browns. I mean, they say things like your second step on this zone play needs to be a couple inches shorter. I mean, like 2 inches shorter. And these 6'6", 340-pound giants are like, well, okay. I mean, but it makes all the difference in the world. Your hand placement's a little wide, or, it's such a technique-driven position.
No doubt. And usually some of the smarter guys too are the offensive line.
Oh yeah.
Want to
tough
know
and smart
scheme and so
tough and smart. It's hard to take. If you're tough and smart, you're going to make it in this league somehow.
Yep, you work on your body for a few years. And that's why there's such a late breakout age sometimes with offensive linemen versus other positions. It's not just pure speed talent that, you got to cultivate these things. All right. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. That's our breakout running backs and offensive linemen. Who makes your list that we missed? Let us know at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Matt and I back next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you Monday right here. Peacock.
Peacock Williamson. There you go.
On the Locked On.